it's time to talk about Straight Outta Compton, all right? So, pardon me, as many of you know already, this film came out last Friday, and wherever you went, the theaters were packed. Like, me and two of my boys, we saw this in the Oakville, Mississauga border area of Winston Churchill, okay? Winston Park Drive to be exact. And the theater was packed. We got there early, thank goodness. And I always happen to notice that when you're watching a movie on opening night and the theater is like packed, like elbow to elbow, the atmosphere just heightens up the level of the movie that much more because everyone's all enjoying it all at the same time, basically. And I think that's what happened. That's what manifested within that theater. And I'm sure the same thing happened in other theaters as well during the big night, or the big weekend for that matter. Speaking of big weekends, these guys had a big weekend. You know, Director F. Gary Gray, Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, everyone who was on board and had their hands on this piece, masterpiece, should I say. This movie took home $60.2 million, the biggest box office take home of that weekend. It was just insane and rightfully deserving because this movie, from top to bottom, in my estimation, was completely accurate as to how the formation of the group took place and the events around them. The events around them that helped them shape this group. All right. Now, the three main protagonists of this movie were Dre, were Cube, and also Eazy-E. They basically told the story about how these guys came to be and how they joined as one union. All right. Now, with Eazy, it starts off right off the bat, you know, no spoilers, mind you, no spoilers. It starts off right off the bat detailing his history as a drug dealer because the first scene of the movie is him transporting some narcotics to a drug house and basically him wanting money for it, essentially. And the rest just kind of goes from there. Ice Cube, his beginning in the movie starts off with him in the school bus writing some rhymes, basically foreshadowing the events to come within the movie, about him being the lyricist of the group, him being the pen master, so to speak. And then Dre, of course, his beginning started off with him in his room just zoning out and listening to some of the most classic, iconic soul and funk records that you can think of. Basically panning out the rest of the movie of him being the producer, him having the sound for the group, essentially. And then later on in the movie, you get introduced to DJ Yella and also MC Ren, and then also their manager, Jerry Heller. Basically, whatever you heard about NWA, whatever you read about them, took place in this film. On top of that, the events that shaped their sound and shaped their stories for them to tell it to you also took place in this movie. The drug trade during the 80s, aka Reaganomics. Also, you had police brutality that was being exhibited and the abuse of power by law enforcement in Compton. You also had gang banging and gang activity that was also exhibited in this movie as well. They hit on so many of these points, and it gave the audience a clear idea as to what was the inspiration behind their message as a whole. And what I loved about these things were the fact that these events aren't even dated because of the fact that most of these events still happen to this day. Gang violence still happens to this day. Also, drug trade and the war on drugs is still happening to this day. And unfortunately, police brutality still happens to this day. I mean, how many cases have we come across within the last at least 10 years? Trayvon Martin, like the list goes on, and they detail it in this movie, and it almost, in a sense, I don't know if they did this on purpose, maybe they did, but it brings everything back full circle, and it just lets us know that we haven't come that far as these tragedies and these atrocities are concerned. And basically, these incidences were used as fuel for their music. So I love the fact that they touched on that. And besides from the drama, they also touched on some of the comedic aspects of this movie, like Eazy-E's sense of humor, for example, or basically 5 young boys, you know, whether they're teenagers or like, you know, young adults who just got out of adolescence, you know, flirting around with all the groupies that they were coming across and what have you. And then, you know, midpoint through the movie, that's when you kind of dive into some of the things and the evils that basically tore down their groups. So such as money and finances, for example, greed, you know, power. These are all the evils that basically tore at the roots of what was the foundation of NWA. It was detailed about how Q wanted to leave the group because of the fact that he felt like Eazy was the one getting the majority of the money in the group, whereas everyone else was just getting undercut. And luckily for him, and for people who may not know, he didn't even sign a contract. He was waiting for a contract to be delivered, but little did he know that everyone else got their contracts and signed them. Q was the only one who didn't sign the contract, which is why he was able to leave and do his own thing. And then you go into a bit of his own solo career with how he linked up with Public Enemy in New York and basically recorded his own solo albums. They get into his diss track to NWA, which is No Vaseline. And basically, it wasn't like these guys were lip syncing all of the records that they had done. All of these actors basically rhymed every single word of these songs that were performed way back when. So they had to study them. They had to get the mannerisms down. And on top of that, let's talk about the mannerisms. O'Shea Jackson Jr. played Ice Cube, his father. And his trademark snarl that Ice Cube does, he had it down pat. It was amazing. You had Eazy-E's mannerisms being taken into play. And what I loved about that was the fact that even though you had every single surviving member of NWA coaching these young actors how to portray them on film, Jason Mitchell, the character or the actor who played Eazy-E, didn't have that benefit. So I think he had to dig a little bit deeper than everyone else, in my opinion, and try to encapsulate the essence that was Eazy-E. And I think he did a tremendous job at that, and I think Eazy would have been proud of the work that he did nonetheless. So, do I think this is a good movie? Yes. Do I think it's a great movie? Hell yes. Was it better than Notorious? Yes, it was. Miles beyond Notorious. And I will say this. The best use of Bye Felicia was used in this movie. I'm not even going to expand on that. Watch the movie and you will know what I am talking about indeed. I recommend everyone to go see this movie. It was amazing. I loved every single second of it. Now,